The first thing that usually pops into everyone's mind when you talk about the military doing research with lasers is, of course, offensive and/or defensive weaponry. How can we develop a laser to shoot something down or disable some piece of equipment? There's another aspect of laser research that didn't occur to me until recently, and in today's video, I would like to illuminate that for you. Recently, of course, we have been talking about these two strange flashes that were picked up in shortwave infrared over the southern part of the United States. When we looked further into this, we realized that the points delineated by these two lines occurred over known military facilities. The 138th in Oklahoma at Tulsa, a NASA facility near Lake Charles, Louisiana, called Chennault Field, the 118th Air Intelligence Wing, which we dedicated almost an entire video to, based out of Berry Field and Nashville International Airport, and the 53rd Weapons Evaluation Group at Tyndall in Florida. Now, looking further into this, doing some more research, I found some information that I think my audience is going to be very interested in hearing. One thing that many people observed about these two lines is that they're virtually the exact same length, and when you measure them, they're almost identical. About 440 miles long. Now that's key for today's video. Keep that in mind. 440 miles long. In another video, we also talked about the 2004 incident with the Nimitz off the Baja Peninsula. For those of you who are unaware, an entire carrier strike group over a 6-day period tracked some anomalous aerial vehicles. AAVs is basically what the military refers to UFOs as now. And an E-2C Hawkeye picked it up. A destroyer picked these up. They even dispatched flights of F-18s to go intercept them. And there's gun camera footage all over the internet. You can find it for yourself. You can just Google those terms. And they came away with more questions than answers after having intercepted these craft. Now, the craft themselves were actually smaller than the F-18s, but they didn't have any wings. They had no means of thrust, at least not observable to the human eye. How were they doing what they were doing? Now, having a background myself in intelligence, you see things like this through a different lens than other warfighters. Even if the craft made no offensive action toward the carrier strike group, it would present an unacceptable threat to OPSEC. That any craft that seemed to be intelligently controlled could just appear within the AO of a strike group, observe, and leave without the U.S. military doing anything about it. That would be priority number one to figure out. Who's doing it? How are they doing it? What's the method, and how can we interdict it? And that's why I brought up this bullet point from the actual report. Anomalous aerial vehicle was no known aircraft or air vehicle, and here's the thing you need to remember, currently in the inventory. That's a specific denominator of the United States or any foreign nation. Experimental aircraft are not in the inventory. So this statement doesn't mean they don't know what it was. AAV exhibited advanced low observable characteristics at multiple radar bands, rendering U.S. radar-based engagement capabilities ineffective. See, there's all different kinds of intelligence in the military. There's electronics intelligence, there's human intelligence, and each of those has its own subcategory. What they observed here, once again I'll reiterate, was an unacceptable threat to operational security. And that would have vaulted whatever this was to the number one thing on the list of the military to do that day. Figure this out and mitigate it. Because it really doesn't matter how good you are if your enemy, whatever it is, can observe you at will at any range and then just disappear and you can do nothing about it, forget it. It's over. Now, this was an image captured captured, pardon me, many years ago over Area 51. Now, it was just an anomalous white blob, but I made the comment in the most recent video about cloaking technology. If you can just hide what's there, it doesn't matter what the people see as long as it's not what you don't want them to see. Think of the little black box that people have been using for decades to remove things on the internet, the little censored box. This is just the same thing in the real world, just with white. And what better way to hide something like this up in the clouds if it was solid and white? Now that was one theory, but wait until you hear this. We talked about, well, real quick, about the Navy opening up just this year a directed energy lab very, very near to where this all happened with the Nimitz. That's why I included this in today's video. Point Mugu. For those of you who are unaware, here's Naval Air Station Point Mugu. We'll zoom out real quick. This is the southern part of California, just northwest of Los Angeles, near Oxnard, and people have noticed for a long time this what seems like a strange underwater base off the coast near there. And where all this happened with the Nimitz was right here, just a stone's throw away, figuratively speaking, of course. Now, think about this. This is from the war zone, September of this year. Blasting the air in front of hypersonic vehicles with lasers could unlock unprecedented speeds. See, this is the other application of lasers that I was talking about initially. They have craft that can blast directly in front of them lasers, and it superheats the atmosphere in front of them, reducing drag. Because that would be, when we go back to this image, everything they observed with the UFO Tic Tac craft should have defied the law of aerodynamics. How can you accelerate that fast without an enormous amount of heat buildup on the surface of whatever craft you're using? That's the big limiter to speeds. It becomes exponentially impossible to move faster and faster when you get around Mach 10, Mach 11. It's not about the power of the engine, it's about the amount of atmosphere you have to push out of the way and the heat that creates. Well, this changes that game. Now, here's where the 440 miles comes in. I know we took a long time getting here. Let me show you what I think might be responsible for those two white 440-mile long stretches of superheated atmosphere. I had thought initially perhaps they were testing a laser weapon where they were firing something from point A to point B. What we might be seeing is the actual flight of an aircraft. What we might be seeing is the actual flight of an aircraft. And that line that you are seeing is a line of superheated atmosphere that was being created by the aircraft to reduce drag. Now, why do I think that? And why 440 miles? All right, I'm going to give you the link to this. There's a lot of information in this article, but the most important thing to go down to here, as with all hypersonic systems, drag and the resulting thermal stress of extremely high-speed flight are two of the biggest hurdles faced by these vehicles. Even with advanced geometry, extreme levels of heat are generated by friction on the skin of high-speed craft, which can potentially degrade the structural integrity of the airframe and damage internal components, potentially even in catastrophic fashion. When you add shielding, you add weight, and you reduce maneuverability. Tweaking the geometry of the vehicle mitigates drag, but it also reduces what you can put on the vehicle. Now, they have this new thing called drag reduction through directed energy deposition. And they've been developing this not only for the Air Force, but for the Navy. But here's where things get a little weird. When you scroll down through here and you start to read, you come to a spot here Throughout the last 2 decades, researchers in Brazil and the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Rochester, New York, have built upon this theoretical research and designed experiments to test energy deposition in hypersonic wind tunnels. The concept became known as the laser-supported directed energy air spike. The laser-supported directed energy air spike. Now, researchers in Brazil, 440 miles long. 440 miles long, 440 miles long, Brazil. What do those two things have to do with each other? This was from 30 June of this year. Shocking weather, record-breaking mega flash bolt of lightning, quote-unquote, giant air quotes, asterisk, more than 440 miles long, strikes where? Over Brazil. Something was observed over Brazil in June of this year. What that appeared to be a bolt of lightning that was 440 miles long. Now, what are the odds? What are the odds that we could put all this together and have it just be a coincidence that the bolt of lightning, asterisk giant air quote, observed over Brazil was 440 miles long, and we know this year, for a fact, that they are testing high-energy lasers in Brazil. And as if that wasn't bad enough, we have two flashes appearing over the southern United States that are exactly 440 miles long and begin and end over military bases. Coincidence? Is it a coincidence that it happened twice? 3 times, technically, if you talk about it being over Brazil. And all in the same year. All in the same year. The flash in Brazil was June. This was October. The article talking about this is September. What happened up in Tennessee? Also September. What you might be seeing, or I should say what we might be observing, is the actual flight of an aircraft, and this streak that appeared in shortwave infrared is just the laser mounted to the aircraft superheating the atmosphere in front of it. The Air Force has stated recently that they've developed a missile that's going to hit Mach 10, meaning it can hit a target 1,000 miles away in less than 12 minutes. And that was here, from the drive. You see, with this technology, with the ability to mitigate aerodynamics, the shape of the vehicle doesn't matter. The shape of the vehicle doesn't matter. And later on in this article where they talk about this, they've even made allegation that they can reduce the drag not by 40%, but by 90%. If you can reduce the drag on a vehicle by 90%, you can literally change the shape of the vehicle. And it doesn't even have to be aerodynamic anymore. You can make a brick fly. I forget who said that. You could make a brick fly as long as you get it going fast enough. And that might be what we're looking at here. It's called the LSD wave. It would create a detached shock wave at some distance in advance of the leading edge, which would theoretically do the work of pushing the atmosphere out of the way and thereby suppress the formation of a strong bow shock and associated wave drag. The hot pressurized gases created by the LSD would also theoretically then be used by the craft's air-breathing engine, thus reducing the amount of energy required for combustion. So you'd have heat on the front and you'd have heat on the rear. And that would explain exactly what this flash was. And I just don't think the locations are any accident. The 138th Fighter Wing, they fly F-16s, Cs, and Ds out of this place. The 118th Air Intelligence Wing, they fly drones. The 53rd Weapons Evaluation Group, their job, their whole mission in the world, shooting down drones or tracking drones. And this NASA facility called Chenault Field, and you can look this up. In fact, I'll even give you the links down in the first pinned comment where you can read about this. They use that field for testing hypersonic aircraft. They even admit this. This is open source knowledge. And these all four are controlled airspace, and that's the key. Controlled airspace for these tests. That's what I really, really think was going on here. Great time to do these tests, by the way, when everybody's paying attention to other things. I've said it before, if people weren't so caught up with social issues and political problems, the number one stories across the world this year and the last 2 years would have been scientific. The massive advances that are being made with these technologies. And I'll say it again. 30 June 2020. Shocking weather. Record-breaking mega flash bolt of lightning 440 miles over Brazil. Where are they testing these futuristic laser propulsion systems? Brazil. Right here from the drive. And I'll give you the link to this article. It's long, it's detailed. The guy did a great job with it. Really did. It's truly incredible. Through the last 2 decades, researchers in Brazil and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute built upon this theoretical research and designed experiments to test energy deposition in hypersonic wind tunnels, they say. But who knows? Who truly knows what state they are at with this? Remember the Pentagon investigations that we found all over the place? Remember when the U.S. recently purchased a giant Air Force base from Brazil? That's where this all started. Giant military base back in 2017-18 was purchased by the United States, primarily for the Space Force, just outside of Belém. This is what's going on. This is what I really think, honestly, is going on. If you can create aircraft that have connectivity that Jedi, this new cloud system, would provide, meaning you have seamless integration of information about targets everywhere around the world, it would change how you would design an aircraft. If you could create aircraft that didn't need wings and could fly at hypersonic speeds, it would change how you would fight warfare. You can't track the aircraft. You can't dogfight with the aircraft. The Navy proved that. The Navy proved that. You can't dogfight with these things. They're here, and then in a matter of seconds, they're hundreds of miles away. Why? They don't have to push the atmosphere out of the way to move. They don't have to use the atmosphere to create lift because of these high-energy laser systems aboard. It's just an absolutely insane thing to think of, to even try to absorb it, of what future aircraft might look like. This might be it right here. You really have to wonder if maybe they figured this out back in the 40s in New Schwabenland. I mean, imagine what that would have meant for World War II. Now, I haven't seen or heard anybody ever talk about any of these craft ever delivering any kind of offensive payload. But the intelligence coup that you could have with these, if you could literally identify in real time exactly when your enemy's planes are even getting rolled out of the hangars and getting fueled up, it's game over. It's game over. They lose every time. You have that kind of a lead. You have that kind of a lead on your enemy as far as, knowing what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Well, heck, forget that. You could observe the pilots getting out of bed in the morning. You could observe the pilots getting in their car and driving to the Air Force Base before they even get in the planes, and you could report that with a craft like this. Absolutely insane stuff. Absolutely crazy, but it all makes sense. This would be the most important thing for the Navy, for the Air Force, for the entire military to determine how this would be done, who could do this, and with what technology. And now we have reports of this very exact thing occurring in Brazil. And people explaining it, of course, by saying it's a bolt of lightning, but you could call these bolts of lightning, I guess. But anyway, 20 minutes. I will leave it there. So we're going to continue to look into this. Thank you so much for the support. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.